Hello students, welcome to our afternoon read aloud. Today we will continue our learning about the Powhatan, and I also want you to keep an eye out for nonfiction text features, right? Those are the special things in an information book that help you learn the information better. So we're going to be reading Powhatan Indians by Suzanne Morgan Williams, and already on the front I can see a drawing of some Powhatan women gardening, farming, right? And we've heard a little bit about that already, how the women did gardening or farming. Powhatan. Oh, and some students have said, Mrs. Kilmer, in another video we heard them say Powhatan. And I know when I was growing up, we always said Powhatan, but we've heard lately that the Powhatan people prefer the pronunciation Powhatan. So that's what I'm trying to do. If you hear different, please email me and let me know. Okay, table of contents. A good sign of an information book. River and forest people, Powhatan tribes and villages, working together, Powhatan Seasons, growing up, Chief Powhatan, new people, Pocahontas, pushed from the land, unfair rules, Virginia Indians, speaking out, Powhatans today, living people. Glossary, more books to read, and index. And we're just going to read the first half of the book today. Oh, I see a heading. River and forest people. I see pictures. Actually, in class sometimes for pictures we go like a camera, except then it makes a little bit too much noise. But since you're at home, you could do that. You could go when you see a picture. I see a chart, right? A map is a kind of chart. Okay, let's read. I'm going to scoot like this so you can see it while River and forest people. The sun is rising. A deer sips from a river. An opossum rushes home. This is Chesapeake Bay. The Big Bay stretches from present-day Maryland to Virginia. Here, rivers flow into the Atlantic Ocean. The ocean pushes into the rivers. Forests cover the rolling hills. Fish, shellfish, birds, and animals live here. So do the Powhatan people. The Powhatan tribes have lived here for a very long time. In 1600, there were about 30 different tribes living around Chesapeake Bay. Each tribe has its own name, such as Mattaponi, Pamunkey, Nansemond, Rappahannock, Appomattox, Appomattox, and Weyanoke. These tribes did not call themselves Powhatan, so there were many different tribes. They did not call themselves Powhatan. Here's a map. I'll put close up. You can see this inset shows this is in the eastern part of the United States where we live. And this is modern day Virginia. And this is the area where all these tribes lived. This is Jamestown. And this is the Chesapeake Bay, a very big important body of water. And this is called a compass rose, right? It shows directions, north, south, east, and west. Oh, there's another heading. I see two pictures and I see some captions explaining the pictures. Powhatan tribes and villages. Some tribes, such as the Mattaponis and the Pamunkeys, spoke the same language. They did many things in the same way. In the early 1600s, a man named Chief Powhatan ruled many of the tribes. English people arrived in Virginia in 1607. They called all the tribes Powhatan, after their leader. And here we can see a close-up picture of a village with their farming. It says, there were many houses and fields in Secota, a Powhatan village. Powhatans lived in villages. Women built long, round houses. They bent wood from soft, young trees into a frame. Then they covered the frame with mats and tree bark. The village had a temple to honor the gods. Powhatan women planted in fields near the villages. This painting shows a Powhatan man and woman eating. It was painted in the late 1500s. You can see a close-up. This reminds me of the photograph of the bowl of food we saw in the book yesterday, and you can see the other things they eat also. Working together. Oh, I see pictures. I see captions, right? Powhatans got what they needed from the land and water. Men hunted deer and small animals. They made tools, fish traps, and canoes. They fished in the rivers and the bay. Powhatan men protected the villages. Women gathered shellfish, such as crabs and clams. In their own words, there were so many fish that we tried to catch them with a frying pan. That's something that Captain John Smith said in 1624. Powhatans often fished in canoes. They used spears and nets to catch fish. Here you can see close up. And here it says sometimes women and men worked together to plant fields in the spring. And this is the same picture from the cover, right? Here it says, women also gathered plants as well as wood for fires. They made clothing from animal skins and plants. Some women wove warm clothing from bright feathers. Women grew corn, beans, melons, and squash. They made baskets and pottery. Pottery is like pots made out of clay, right? They took care of the children. The fields and houses were owned by the women who built and cared for them. So the women owned the houses. So when we look at a picture like this and we see the village and all the fields, the women owned all of that, right? The men supported by hunting and fishing, and they sometimes helped plant in the spring, but the women owned everything, all the land. Powhatan Seasons. Powhatan life changed with the seasons. Powhatans fished and hunted all year. Women planted corn and vegetables in the spring. After the planting was done, the Powhatans left their villages. Men fished, women gathered wild roots for food. Okay, so they would plant and then they would go wandering and do gathering of other things and hunting and fishing. Here's a picture with a caption. Powhatans grew some of their food. They also gathered things to eat. Below are some of the foods they ate. I see beans, I see corn, and I see some green things. A new year. Geese return to the Chesapeake Bay every spring. Powhatans begin their year when the geese arrive. How interesting, right? We've been noticing some New Year celebrations lately, but the Powhatans celebrate when the geese come back in the spring. And to hunt deer, Powhatans would hide under deer skins. This let them get closer to the deer. So here you can see some Powhatan men hiding under deer skins so they can get close to hunt. In the summer, the Powhatans returned to the villages to take care of the gardens. They picked corn and squash. In the late fall, they left again. They hunted deer and gathered nuts in the forest. Powhatans spent the winter in their villages. During the winter, Powhatans ate the food they had grown or gathered during the rest of the year. So there was seasons to their planting, to their growing, to their hunting, to their gathering. Sticky pages. Growing up. Ooh, I think we're going to learn about what it was like for children. Powhatan children learned from their families. In the past, girls learned what plants were good to eat. Boys learned to hunt and fish. They hunted muskrats and dove in the ocean for shellfish. Children also helped to grow crops in the fields. They might have pulled weeds or scared away birds. So Powhatan boys would have learned how to smoke fish. This kept fish from rotting so they could be eaten later. So remember, nowadays we have refrigerators and other ways to keep food fresh, but in the old days, no refrigerators. So most foods, both meats and vegetables, had to be maybe dried out so they would last longer, right? And in this case, over a low fire, the fish dries out and then it will last longer so they can eat it later in winter when there may not be fish available. Life changed for Powhatans when they were teenagers. The tribes had a ceremony for teenage boys. Older men took the boys into the forest. They might not eat for a long time. They learned to deal with pain. After the ceremony, the boys were treated as men. Girls married when they were teenagers. When a man asked to marry a woman, he brought meat, fish, and plants to her family. This showed he could care for her. A young Mattaponi woman gets water from the Mattaponi River. This picture was made by Sharon, Gentle Wind Sun Eagle. So this is a painting by a Native American of a Native American girl in a canoe gathering water. Chief Powhatan. In the early 1600s, a man named Chief Powhatan ruled many tribes around Chesapeake Bay. Each tribe had its own leader, called a werowance. Both men and women could be werowances. They helped Chief Powhatan make decisions for the tribes. Chief Powhatan could also tell the werowances what to do. Medicine men also helped make decisions. They asked the gods for help. Then the medicine men told Chief Powhatan what they thought was going to happen in the future. So Chief Powhatan is shown here wearing face paint. Now, I don't know if that's a drawing from someone who maybe actually saw him or maybe also using their imagination a little. And here's a picture. Chief Powhatan's cape is made of deerskin. The decorations are made of shells. Chief Powhatan was powerful. It was important to make him happy. Each tribe brought gifts for Chief Powhatan. They brought him things such as deerskins, corn, and jewelry. They brought gifts to the temples too. These gifts were for the gods. So that's all we're going to read for today, but we still get to do something at the end. And what I love so much about this book and the other books we're reading is I feel like we can really get some ideas about what it looked like, where the Powhatan lived long ago, and what their villages look like. And I like the idea how the women owned and kind of ran the villages and owned the fields and were in charge of growing things. And then we also learn about how they hunted and fished, the different kinds of food they ate, right? And also about what it was like for Powhatan children, how they learned from their parents, right? What to do to help the family. So I hope you enjoyed our afternoon read aloud. We'll enjoy the rest tomorrow. Don't forget to keep washing your hands, cover your coughs and sneezes, do some reading, do some writing, help your family around the house, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.